EQ or equalization is a key part of the mastering process. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to use the pre-EQ module here in Final Touch on the iPad. So let's go. Hi, my name is Pete and this is Studio Live Today, where in this series of videos, I'm helping you master your best music using Final Touch on the iPad. And in this video, we're going to be taking a look at the EQ modules here in Final Touch. So let's dive in now and take a look. Here we are back in Final Touch on my iPad, and I've already imported my song Goats and I'm ready to master. If you missed the previous episode where I showed how to import a file, you can check that in the link above and down in the description. But what we're going to do now is we're going to tap and drag on our pre-EQ and drag this down into our effects chain. You'll notice that the light has come on in the top left corner, and this means we're now ready to use this EQ. Now, if you want to make sure that you're reset and you're looking at the same screen I am, tap on the presets at the top there and tap reset and you'll get back to this view. Now let's go through what we have going on here. What we have is 8 different bands on our EQ. So each of these are set at a different frequency. So if we tap on the band there, and you look down the bottom, you can see here that this is our 500 Hertz band, and we can adjust that by simply tapping and dragging to the right, and it will go up, and if we drag to the left, it will go down. So this is changing the frequency, whether it is low or high or in the mid-range of our particular sound that we're adjusting. To boost or cut, we tap and hold, and to boost our frequency, we raise it up like that. If we want to reduce or cut our frequency, we drag it down like that. And you can see that the move will preview, and then when you release, it will show you that move that you have made. The other way to adjust this is down the bottom here. If you want a more exact measure, you can tap directly on the frequency there and we can input this directly. If we wanted to make this 450, we tap and hit done, and there it is moved across to the left. Just next to that, down the bottom here, we can tap on the gain and we can adjust that. If we wanted to have a direct, let's make this a 10 dB boost and hit done, and it jumps up to 10, and we can do the same here with our Q. We can make this Q more narrow or wider. So what does that mean? Well, let's go 1 here, and you can see there that widens out that Q. It stretches it out. If we tap the Q again and let's increase this up to 8, it gives us a much more narrow, what we call a notch filter, where we're just notching out that one particular frequency. So that is a way we can adjust our Q. The other way we can do that is to actually pinch or separate our fingers. So if we hold down with 2 fingers and we drag together, we can make the Q narrow. If we touch with 2 fingers and separate them, we can actually spread it out. And this helps give us either more subtle or more drastic and dramatic EQ curves on our parametric EQ. If we don't want all 8 bands here, the buttons at the bottom here, we can actually tap to disable. So let's just remove some of these and we'll just reduce this down to a 5-band EQ. And now you can see here that we've only got these 4, in fact, EQ points. So we've got 1 right down the bottom here, 1 for our high frequencies, and then 2 in the middle. So you can have anywhere up to 8 bands, but if you want less bands for a different kind of feel, then you can actually reduce that down by tapping and removing those down the bottom. Final Touch lets us use 5 different types of filters here, and to adjust the type of filter we're using, we tap in the bottom right here where it shows the filter shape, and here we can select between high pass, low shelf, peak, high shelf, and low pass filters. So all of these are used for different purposes, and while we're not going into details about how to use an EQ, I'll show you those all briefly right now. Our high pass filter is used to actually cut the low end. So if you've got a lot of bass rumble or a lot of low end you want to remove, if we tap our lowest frequency here and select the high pass filter, we can now drag this to the right and set at what frequency we want those low frequencies to be cut. So we want everything under, say, 100 Hertz cut out of our mix. Then we can put that filter to 100 and it will gently cut off most of those frequencies below 100 Hertz. If we tap and change this to a low shelf, what we can now do is actually more gradually reduce those low frequencies. So if we don't want to cut them entirely, we just want to reduce them, we can actually add a low shelf. Our high shelf works in much the same way. If we tap on this high one and tap high shelf, we can now actually increase this and we actually get a shelf type effect there. Rather than it being a peak and then going back down, it will go up and then it will stay consistent. And that's a good way to boost your treble or your high end if you're finding your mix needs a little bit of extra oomph at the treble end. And finally, our low pass is the opposite of our high pass. So this will cut all of the frequencies above a certain frequency. frequency. So if we dial this one in here, we can put it to say 4,500 hertz. It will mean that everything over 4,500 hertz will actually be cut out. Now this is a pretty wacky EQ curve for a song, so let's tap and go reset and get back to our standard curve. Now while we're up the top there, let's take a look at our presets, because these can be super handy for using with your EQs. So if we tap on there, you can see here that we have all of these factory presets that we can actually choose from, and these will adjust the curves for us here on our EQ. So let's tap one of these. Let's add the touch of analog warmth. And if we tap on that one, you can see what this has done is it's added a small peak filter here at 75 hertz, going up 1 dB. We've then got a small peak there of 0.4 dB at around 200 hertz. And then we've got a cut here of around 1 dB at 3000 hertz. So that just gives us a different sort of sound. So what I'm going to do is let's play this back, and I'll put the EQ on and off, and you'll hear the difference that just this little EQ difference has made.
Goats have it easier than me. They don't have to work, they don't have to lift a finger. Goats have it easier than me. They don't have a care, and I wanna be as free as goats.
So you can hear there it has made a difference, but one of the reasons I wanted to show you that is, if you're watching the meters on the right, you will have noticed that we've started peaking. So because we've got some boosts in here, so we've got some very small boosts, but they are actually adding to the low end of our sound. And what has actually happened is our output here will need to be adjusted down, because every time we boost up something here, we need to make sure that we're no longer clipping over here. So let's just do this again. I've made some more dramatic peaks here just to prove this point out. And now let's hit play, and you'll see that our output will start clipping, and I'll reduce that down to make sure that we are under 0 dB.
Lift a finger. Goats have it easier than me. They don't have a care, and I wanna be as free as goats. I think.
So there you can see that we've made these dramatic moves, and we do need to make sure that our output at each level, and as we're going left to right, we want to make sure at no point are we actually clipping our signal. Now that's a move that we wouldn't actually make in a real mix here in a mastering process, but I just wanted to show you that if you do make boosts here in your EQ, keep an eye on your output meter, and you may need to reduce that down to make sure that you're not clipping your signal. Let's tap our presets again, and this time let's go for some rock brightness, and we'll tap out, and here what we've actually got is it's actually cut. So we've actually cut by 2.7 dB down here, down at the bottom end. We've got another cut here of 2.7 dB at 500 hertz, and then we've got a boost of 2.3 dB up at around 7,000 hertz here as well, or 7 kilohertz. So let's take a listen to how this sounds now in our mix.
That I might go insane, putting up with.
So that actually sounds quite good to me, because the mix was a little bit muddy, so we've actually dropped out in some of that lower end that was kind of a little bit overloaded. So this might be a good mastering move for this song, and what we can do now is we can decide whether we want to use this in stereo or mid-side mode. So this is the final thing that we're going to show here in the EQ process, and this applies to a lot of our other modules as well. I talked about it briefly in the introduction in this series, but the two different ways that we have to use our modules, at the moment we have stereo, which means if we tap the L button here and the R button here, we can actually change that. So let's say we had a guitar here on the left that we didn't want to have this increase here. We could actually drop that back down so that that's a flatter EQ on that side, come back to our right side and leave that up. So when we play it back, it's actually going to be different on the left and the right side. We don't want that, so let's hit undo. But what about the mid side and the mid side as opposed to the stereo? Well, let's slide this over, and now we can actually adjust this based on our mid side. So we've got our side there and we've got our mid there. So you can see here that under rock brightness, by default, what it's done to our mids is it's actually got a really big cut there on the low end, at least below 500 hertz. But what it's done on the sides is it's actually kept that in there. Now, I may or may not want that. This might not be the right setting for me, but what we can see here is that we can actually adjust those two independently. Let's just grab another preset and let's go richness and depth and see what this one does. So on this one, the sides have got the curve there, and if we go to the mids, they've got a very different curve there. So what that basically means is that we can actually adjust these separately. So if we hit play now,
All of the things you say and do, and I need to.
And if you look at our metering on this meter here, it's now got M and S. So instead of being left and right, it's showing us the volume of our mids or the center part of our song and the side or the far left and right of our song. Let's play it again and take a look at that output meter again.
Find another way.
And what we can actually do, if we tap the link button here, say we wanted to bring down the mids, but we wanted to increase the volume on the sides, we can actually do that independently here. So let's do that and hit play again.
To survive in this planet, I might eat a cat, and maybe then I can be at one with.
So that's not working for this mix yet, but you can see what I'm doing here, and you can see the power that you have here. If you want a bit more bass or you want a bit more vocal up the middle, you can actually control that here by increasing your mids and dropping down your sides. Or you want a bit more stereo width and a little bit less in the middle there with your vocals and your kick drum and your bass, you can adjust it the other way around. Tap on your link button, double tap, and you can bring them back together. The other cool thing we can do here is we can actually solo. So if we want to just hear, say the sides, because this is going to be more dramatic, we'll go to side and we'll just tap on the S, the solo button there. Now let's hit play on this. And what you're hearing there is just those side frequencies. So it's cut out everything down the middle, which is our lead vocal. It's a lot of that sort of real sort of high energy sound, and we've only got the sides. Let's now go over here and solo our mid side instead and take a listen at this.
Have to lift a finger. Goats have it easier than me. They don't have a care.
So what you can hear is in this mix, there's a lot going on up the middle. So this maybe give me an indication that later on, when we're looking at our stereo imaging, maybe I want to spread this out a little bit more, because it's obviously that I've got a lot of stuff down the middle and maybe we need a little bit more stereo width. But that is a cool way to use the mid-side mode here. And once again, we want to link them again. We tap on link and now it will use that same curve for both of them, but we can actually adjust it independently so that we can have the mids as one and the sides as a different type. As soon as you hit link, it brings them back together. But if we then go and change this one, we can now go to the mids and the sides and they'll be different. But again, once you tap link, they're back together and they'll be the same. So that's how we use our stereo and our mid side modes. And that is the same across some of our other modules as well. As I've mentioned in previous videos, we do have a second EQ here, which is our post EQ. Now, this works in exactly the same way, so I'm not going to go through all of this in detail again in a separate episode. So what I'm going to do is explain why we have a second one right here and right now. So the reason for this is that we may make some changes here with our reverb, our dynamics, and our stereo imaging that we then want to actually change the overall mix again. So let's say we add some dynamics here and we really compress our top end, then we get to the post EQ and we realize we've gone too far. Well, yes, you may want to go back here and reduce it, but you also may want to come here and then just sort of dial down and do some final filtering. And keep in mind with mastering, you don't want to be making too many extreme moves. The key thing for mastering is to do no harm, to actually improve upon the final mix when you're doing your mastering. So the post EQ is here to clean up or to just do those final tweaks before you finally go into your maximizer and do your brick wall limiting, which is the last piece of the puzzle. Okay, that was a lot of information in a very short amount of time. So let's recap what we've learned in this video. So Final Touch uses a parametric EQ, which we can adjust by adjusting from left to right, up and down on our EQ grid. We have a number of bands that we can enable and disable using these buttons at the bottom here to tap them on and off. We can also make finite adjustments to each of these by tapping on these bottom options here to actually put in the exact amount. We can change the type of filter being applied in the bottom right here by tapping on that and adjusting the different shapes to get a different type of filter. And we can also use stereo or mid-side mode to have two different types for either our mid and our side, or we can adjust them for our left and our right independently. Keep an eye on that output meter, because every boost that you make is going to increase your overall volume. You may need to drop your output down to make sure that you can not clip your signal. And don't forget that we can link and unlink our output if we want to adjust our left and right or our mid and our side independently to get the right balance in our final volume. Oh, and don't forget those very handy presets that we have up here where we can tap and we can select any preset we like, and that will define all of our different EQ points. And to reset those, tap and tap on reset, and we get our nice blank EQ ready for us to do our magic. There you go, our pre-EQ and our post-EQ modules here in Final Touch on the iPad. In the next episode, we'll be taking a look at the very cool but underutilized reverb module here in Final Touch. So stay tuned for that one and check out some more links down below for more Studio Live today.